I want to begin with a question, a rhetorical question. And in case you don't remember what a rhetorical question is, that means I just want you to ponder the question. I don't want you to shout at me. I don't want you to shout out answers, all right? So here's the rhetorical question. If you could, in one single word, define the true meaning of Christmas this year for you, what would that word be? Don't shout at me. Just hold it close for a moment. If you could, in one single word, define the true meaning of Christmas for you this year, what would that word be? For some, the word might be peace. Maybe you're looking or longing for peace in your life this year. Maybe you're longing for peace in our nation right now and throughout the earth. Maybe your one word is healing. Maybe that's what you're longing for, healing in relationships, maybe healing for your body. Maybe the word is reconciliation. Maybe you've had some conflict in your relationships, in your families, in your own congregation, and you need some reconciliation. I don't know what your word is, but whatever that word is, your one word, I wonder if you could, in your mind's eye, write that word down on a little piece of paper in your mind, fold it up, and put it in your pocket. Or if you don't have a pocket, put it in your purse. And if you don't have a purse, just hold it in your hand. We might want to revisit that word a little bit later on. You see, I was asked that very question this past week when I was being interviewed on one of our local television stations. I was asked, Dr. Giuliano, you're the pastor of the Old Stone Church. If you could define the true meaning of Christmas this year, how would you define it? And almost immediately, one single word popped up into my head and came spilling out of my mouth. I said, hope. Hope. H-O-P-E, hope. For me, Christmas brings us hope. Christmas is the kind of hope that is a light shining in a dark place. Christmas brings us an ability year after year to hope in a better tomorrow if today's not been so good. Hope allows us to see not just what is, but it allows us to see what could be and what should be. And Christians, what will be, because Jesus Christ came into this world. Hope allows us to see beyond the mountains in front of us, beyond the barriers, the things that are stumbling blocks for us. Hope lets us see through the eyes of the heart enlightened, to use a good biblical phrase. Hope gives us vision, allows us to see through the eyes of the heart enlightened toward the blessings and the promises of God. You know, this past week I was listening to Christmas songs on Pandora radio, and that song by Bing Crosby, Do You See What I See, which has been covered by tons of other people too, but it came on the radio. Do you see what I see? I see a child. And I thought to myself, why do we see? Why can we see this child? Why can we see God's word made flesh in this one Jesus? I think because we hope. Hope for me in that one moment was the true meaning of Christmas. You know, our very loved and esteemed associate pastor, Reverend Elder, did something really way cool on Facebook the last few weeks. He predicted the Browns were going to win today. He had just cause, because you remember last year we got the Christmas miracle. We did win. The Browns won last year. So Mark was in good shape to make that prediction, but in case you hadn't checked the news, we didn't win. The Browns lost today. But I said to Mark before the service, I said, you know what's great? You caused us to hope. Just by holding it, we'll get to you in a moment. You caused us to at least imagine what it might like to be a winner for one game. You gave us hope, in a sense. We could imagine, we could see beyond what we've been seeing all season long. I don't know how many of you have ever heard that old story about Jack and Jill. I don't mean Jack and Jill went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. I mean Jack the cynic, Jack the doubter, Jack the pessimist, Jack the Cleveland Browns fan, and Jill the eternal optimist. Jill who's always filled with hope no matter what sort of came at her in her life. And these psychologists, they wanted to do a study. They wanted to find out, well, what makes a pessimist tick? What makes an optimist tick? How can we observe somebody who's kind of negative and unhappy and disappointed and struggling? And how can we observe a person who's hopeful and positive? And so what they did is they took Jack, the pessimist, and they put him in a room filled with all sorts of the latest, greatest technology, electronics, a 58-inch widescreen, flat screen, plasma television, surround sound system, and the latest gaming. And I know a lot of people in the room are thinking, that's a Christmas wish list, Giuliano. You're trying to sneak it in. It's too late. The orders are in. But they put him in with everything you could imagine would be just keep a young Jack happy. And they said, Jack, have fun. Do whatever you want with this stuff. We'll see you in about 4 hours. Now, Jill, they took her to another room down the hallway. And in the room where Jill, the optimist, was going to be, there was absolutely nothing in this room. Nothing except a 10-foot high pile of manure. I know you're thinking, did the pastor just say manure on Christmas Eve? It's coprion, if you want to use the biblical term for it, but we can talk about it later. In this room, there was a 10-foot high pile of coprion, and they said, Jill, you've got 4 hours. We'll come back to check on you and see how things are going. Well, in 4 hours, they went back and they checked on Jack, and there's Jack sitting in the middle of all this electronic equipment. It's all smashed, it's broken, it's laying on the floor. He says, this stuff's junk. And they said, what do you mean, Jack? We gave you the latest, the greatest. He said, no, this isn't the latest, the greatest. This is last year's stuff. And let me tell you, this gaming system isn't compatible with this system. And he had a whole long list of why this stuff was no good. Then they went down the hall to where Jill, the optimist, was. And they opened the door, and you wouldn't believe where Jill was. She's sitting in the middle of that pile of manure. She's throwing manure in the air. It's going against the wall. She's laughing hysterically, and they're thinking, Jill, what's going on here? Why are you so happy? And she says, I just know there's a pony in here somewhere. You know you're going to try and tell that later if you haven't already, so. Hope sees beyond the walls. It sees beyond the stumbling blocks. It sees beyond the troubles, the decay, the disappointment in our lives, on toward the promises of God. In fact, it sees some of the disappointment, the decay, the brokenness, and unhappiness in our lives as a sign that maybe, just maybe, God is here somewhere. Well, no sooner than I had finished up this interview on our local television station program, the lights sort of dimmed, the cameras stopped, the host went to greet the next guest who was coming on the show, and I thought to myself, no, wait, the true meaning of Christmas isn't just hope. There's more. Bring the camera back. It was done. My 3 minutes of fame is over. But I was thinking the whole way home, I walked back from the television station. It was a beautiful sunny day. And I'm thinking to myself, why didn't I say hope empowered by faith? It's not just hope that gets us through as Christians. It's hope empowered by faith that gets us through. Lots of people hope. Lots of people hope there's a pony in there, but not everybody's going to dig in the dirt looking for the pony, if you know what I mean. No, it's hope empowered by faith, to me, that is the meaning of Christmas. It's hope empowered by faith that's willing to roll up its sleeves and dig through the dirt looking for the blessings that God gives us. It's hope empowered by faith that's willing to pull on the marching boots and begin to till in the hard-packed dirt of injustice, marching in our city streets and squares, crying out for truth and justice. It's hope empowered by faith that is willing to move toward those things we long for. Lots of people hope, but only those who are empowered by faith are willing to move toward those things. You know, the book of Hebrews, chapter 11, verses 1, said that faith is the substance of hope. In other words, hope without faith doesn't have substance. There's nothing there but a wish, wishful thinking, pie-in-the-sky thinking. But with faith, there's substance. There's a shape to our hope. There's meaning and purpose to our hope. And there's empowerment to move toward those things we hope for, those things we long for, those things perhaps we wrote down on a little piece of paper in our mind's eye and put in our pocket. It's only hope empowered by faith that can move toward these things. You know, it was hope empowered by faith that allowed that young, pregnant, single teenage girl named Mary to carry the baby for God. She had hope that she was going to get married to Joseph. She had hope that they'd raise children and have a big family. She had hope, but it wasn't until she was visited by an angel who told her what this was about. The substance of your hope, Mary, is that you are going to be carrying the child of God. This one we barely know, we barely had access to, is befriending you, Mary, and befriending the world. And now your hope will have the substance of faith to carry you. And Joseph had it too, didn't he? Joseph had the hope empowered by faith. Joseph had enough hope empowered by faith that he didn't become a nagging husband. He didn't say, well, he's only my stepkid, and we never really did find out who the real father is. Now Joseph stood right beside her, and he walked beside her because he hoped for the very same things, a family, a marriage they wanted to raise together. And he knew that the substance of his hope was this one Jesus as well, because he was also visited by an angel, as you will remember. So his hope became empowered by his faith. Same with those wise guys, the Magi, those scholars who'd been for generations, say some scholars, studying the night sky, the heavens, trying to interpret the stars and the signs on earth, until they connected the pieces and they recognized this was not just of man or of humans, but this was of God. They hoped for this one who would usher in peace on earth and goodwill to all people. But now they connected the stars in the heaven to the signs on earth. And they had hope that now had substance and shape. They had hope that was empowered by faith, and so they packed up everything and they followed that star until it led them to the birthplace of Jesus. No, the meaning of Christmas isn't just hope. It can't be just hope. It has to be hope empowered by faith, nurtured by faith, sustained by faith. Now here's the tricky part. The tricky part is that faith can only be received. Faith can only come to us as a gift. Faith can't be earned or purchased or deserved. only coming to those who are worthy of faith. I have a friend who's an atheist. I call her a thoughtful atheist. And what's a thoughtful atheist? I'm glad you asked. A thoughtful atheist is, she's well-read. She's a professor. She and I used to teach at the same university, and she's well-read. She thinks this stuff through. It's it's a work for her. It's a discipline for her. In many ways, I think we've agreed that we're working toward the same things, the pursuit of truth and the building of peace on earth. However, she has a stumbling block around God and faith. And one day she says to me, "Mark, can you tell me one single solitary thing that God can give to me that I can't give to myself?" And I admire her for her sense of self-empowerment. I'm going to make it happen. If it's going to be, it's up to me and all that stuff. However, I had to take her question seriously. What can God give to my atheist friend that she can't give to herself? Well, you and I know what the answer to that is. It's faith. She can't give herself faith just the same way all of us. We don't have the ability to give ourselves faith. We don't wake up one day and say, "I think I'll take on a faith. I'll just now believe." No, faith comes to us as a gift from God, and at Christmas it comes in the shape of a child. Faith comes in the shape of a baby, an infant named Jesus. Now, I don't know if you've ever noticed what happens when people pick up a baby. Some people don't want to hold a baby, right? God bends low to the earth and says, "Here, hold my baby." A lot of people say, no, that's a cute baby, Lord, but I got my life. I got my plans. I've got my agenda. I pick up that baby, there's going to be responsibilities. This kid's going to have its nose wiped. It's going to have to be fed. I'm going to have some responsibilities, Lord. Some people don't want to pick up the child. But have you noticed when we do pick up a child, there's kind of a melting that happens? It's like we look down into these beautiful eyes and we see the baby cooing at us if it's not fussing. And we recognize that we're holding God's hope for the world. That a newborn child it's God's way of saying, "I believe in you, and I believe in tomorrow, and I believe in this world." And when we hold that child, there's a kind of an awakening. It's like we believe in hope. I walk children through this sanctuary quite often. Every time there's a baptism, I walk the child through the congregation, and the choir sings, "May God who creates you give you life." It's quite lovely. And people sometimes will say, "Hey, Giuliano, how is it that you rarely have a baby crying in your arms when you walk around the church?" Sometimes the baby will be fussing, and then I get the baby. It looks so good. It's like, whoo, they just settle down in my arms. Well, there's two secrets to why Giuliano can carry a baby through the church without it fussing. And I'm only going to tell you one, because the second one's mine. I'm just going to keep that secret. But one of the secrets is I sing to the babies when we walk. I don't know if people can hear that, and it's not like singing a song, but I'm talking to the baby with a melodic kind of voice, partly because the baby's pulling it out of me. It makes me want to sing. It's like, look at this beautiful creature. And then I'll go down the aisle and say, "Oh, well, look who's here. Look, here's your new family. And God, there's Mary Ann, and there's Carl, and look, and there's so-and-so." And they can hear the music, and mostly they're looking at me going, "Where the heck am I? And what'd you do with my mother?" But it's what the child pulls out of me that causes me to sing to the child when I go through the sanctuary. I sometimes wonder, I've been a pastor for almost 30 years, and throughout the 30 years or so of ministry, I've seen something that really breaks my heart. It really disappoints me. It's when you get a fussy kid in the sanctuary and somebody will do this. You know, the kind of scowl at mom or dad who's trying to calm the baby. I always say the only fussy kid in worship who ever stressed me out was my own kid. And at that point, I just call him up. You come sit with dad today. But kids are welcome. My goodness, our faith is built on a child coming into the world, God's child. And I sometimes wonder, what would it be like if that mom or that dad's trying to calm this squawking baby and somebody goes, you know, they're giving that kind of scowl, that look like we do have a quiet room, you know, and there's a nursery back there. But what if mom, or what if dad, whoever's got the fussy kid, walked over to that person squawking and said, would you hold my baby for a minute, please? I think it'd be a game changer. I think that person who scowled, their heart would melt. Their heart would grow 3 times bigger that day, right? You know it. A child has that power to make us believe that God has hope for us and has placed hope in our hands. Give somebody a role, a part to play in the caring of this child. You know, last year, Christmas fell on a Sunday, which meant we had a Sunday service here at Old Stone. We had all our Christmas Eve services, and then we came back in the morning. And that day, I preached a sermon called Baby on Board. And I was talking about what a child, you know, can do to you when you hold a child in your arms, even if it's not your own child, or maybe especially if it's not your own child. And I said, can you imagine what it might be like? I'm having a hard time not laughing because the look on people's faces was something else. I said, can you imagine if then President-elect Trump and President Putin were sitting down to negotiate nuclear weapons, but each of them was given a baby to hold, to feed while they were doing it. And it wasn't their own child. All right, I think if you're negotiating nuclear arms agreements and stuff, you're going to protect your own child in a different way than you might protect somebody else's. But what if Putin had a grandchild or a nephew or something, and they put that in Donald Trump's arms, that one? And if I don't know if our president has a grandchild or a niece or a nephew, and they put that child in Putin's arms, and then they had to negotiate some of the political. I know people are shaking their heads. Are you crazy, Giuliano? Why would you do that? But imagine what it might be like if in the House and the Senate, as they're working on the new tax reform, every congressperson and every senator was given a baby to hold. And it wasn't their own baby, right? Maybe Republicans are holding Democrat babies, and, and Democrats are holding Republican babies. And I just think it would do something to them, right? It would make them think differently. They think, oh, here's a child who needs love and care, and it's hungry, it needs to be fed, and it needs a place to live, and it needs to be wrapped in swaddling clothes to keep it warm. That will affect the way we live and act and the way we are in the world. I think maybe that's why God bent low to the earth and said, hold my baby. Hold my baby, Jesus. And if you do, you will be gifted with this baby-shaped faith that's going to change the way you look at the world, the way you live in the world. You know, I came home after worship that Sunday, Christmas Day last year. My mom was visiting from Canada, and she said to me, Mark, I really didn't like that image of Donald Trump and Putin holding babies. She said, I wouldn't want to give them babies. She said, I don't know if I trust them. Are they worthy to hold babies? Now, my mom is very smart. She's a solid Christian, raised Baptist. She's been in the United Church of Canada all my life. She was my confirmation teacher. She was a Sunday school teacher. She knows her stuff. So soon as she said, are they really worthy to hold the baby? She said, oh my goodness. Are any of us worthy of holding the baby? Is there a single one of us worthy of holding the Christ child, God's hope for the world, in our arms? And yet God, who we barely knew 2,000 years ago, God broke through time and space and knelt low to the earth and gifted us with a baby. Said, here's my baby. Take care of my baby. Hold this child, Jesus. And as the church did, as the church wrapped its arms around this one Christ, the church came to faith. The church was gifted with a faith that allowed the church to find substance for its hope. All of a sudden, the church's hope was empowered by their faith, and the church started to reshape the world because it was holding a baby. Last year, I told you the story about a church that held a Christmas pageant the week or so before Christmas. And after the Christmas pageant was over, they all went into the church hall to have coffee and cookies and celebrate the kids who'd done a great job with the pageant. And one of the ushers went back into the sanctuary to clean up and was horrified to find that someone from the pageant was left behind. It was the little plastic baby Jesus. They'd come to celebrate the birth of this one Jesus, and then they left Jesus behind. They left Jesus in the manger. Folks, if I could challenge you to do just one thing tonight, when we get ready to leave here, don't leave the sweet baby Jesus lying here in the manger at the Old Stone Church. I need you to pick up the baby. I need you to take the baby in your hearts with you and remember that whatever you're doing, wherever you're going, you've got a baby to care about. You've got a baby in your arms. And when someone comes along and wants to mislead you, you have to say, hey, I'm sorry. I can't go that way. I got a baby to take care of. When somebody wants to drag you down the garden path or tempt you into things that are going to be destructive in your life, you say, hey, no can do. I got a baby to take care of. Don't leave the baby Jesus lying in a manger. I suspect that as we carry the baby, if we're recognizing on a daily basis that we're carrying the Christ child with us in our hearts, that's going to empower us to go after the things we hope for, the peace on earth and goodwill toward all. It's going to empower us to go after the need for reconciliation and healing in our families, in our congregations, in our nation, and in this world. Just make sure you're taking the baby with you every single day. And when someone calls you up next week, or you're back at work or at school and someone says, hey, what'd you get for Christmas? You can really freak them out. You can say, for Christmas this year, I got a baby. And his name is Jesus. Merry Christmas, friends. God bless you all.